And welcome back to the show. I am Josh. I have a special guest in with me, world-renowned, 19 years in this revolutionary procedure, Dr. Geiger. We're here with the Texas Health Center for Disc Replacement. You can search for that Center for Disc Replacement, or you can go to www.thcds.com /Center for Disc Replacement and find out a lot of information. And there's a new way, and I say new because it's fairly new to me, but there's a new way to do to improve the surgeries around back and spine. Because I've seen what I've always heard of when we have to get your back replaced. It's been a big ordeal. You see the guys in the giant braces, and they're having to walk around all like Mr. Roboto. And we're talking about there's a better way to improve mobility during that process. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So tell me about the process that you came up with. Again, this was 19 years ago.
Well, actually, it had been done in Europe in the 1980s, and it wasn't until 2000 that we had our first FDA study for an artificial disc. And we were the main site at the Center for Disc Replacement. Back in March of 2000, we did our very first artificial disc. And it made sense to us because just like if you have a bad hip or a bad knee, you would never go to a doctor and say, would you fuse my hip or my knee? You'd walk out of the office and say, he's crazy. So now they do joint replacement. So this was a natural evolution. And not that every patient is a candidate for disc replacement, but especially for the young active patient, this is an ideal solution. Because with the fusion, what happens, we know that if you fuse one level, you put increased stresses on the level above.
Sure.
And we know that the numbers are about 10 to 15% of patients will come back needing an additional surgery. We now have enough experience with artificial discs that show that at 10 years, you have about a 1/3 to 1/4 of the chance of needing surgery at another level. So a young person in their 30s or 40s, this is an ideal solution. Even as we have found older patients also benefit from it, within the criteria that they have to meet, for example, having normal bone density and things like that.
So that makes sense, and kind of the way that I'm picturing this, so if I'm wrong, jump in and correct me. But with the spine, has different little, I call them caps or little sausages as you go up. And if you put a coupler or something that kind of binds those three things together, you are putting more tension on the ones on top and on bottom.
That's exactly right.
So,
and your little sausages are your disc.
Yeah.
And sometimes patients may have one herniated disc and have another, and then complain of chronic low back pain. And we typically would say, well, after 2 or 3 recurrent discs, you need a fusion. Now we say, you know what? You need an artificial disc.
That makes a lot more sense.
To preserve your motion. And a lot of those patients do so much better because they've had the chronic back pain from one operation after another.
So, I know from hearing around, from people talking about back pain, a lot of factors go into back pain. Could be weight, could be, you're not doing the flexibility or the strength training that you need to be doing, those kind of things. What are some of the things that you used to say, hey, here's what to look for to know whether or not to pick up the phone, you should be calling us because you're definitely a good candidate for a disc replacement?
Well, that's really a good point. First of all, most of the back pain people experience can just be treated with rest, some over-the-counter anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen or Aleve, and the proper exercises and core exercises, and then maintaining your weight, doing aerobic exercises, and learning proper body posture and body mechanics. But for those patients that have done all those things and may or may not have had surgery, maybe went through injections, but they had failed all the usuals, whether it's chiropractic, physical therapy, and injections, and they're still having pain, and their quality of life has been affected, which means that, they get up in the morning, they're stiff, they can't put their shoes on. For example, the other day I had a patient who hadn't slept in her bed for 6 months because her back was so bad. The only way she could sleep was on a couch with her legs up against the wall. When those things start to take over in your life, then you need to think about, I need to be evaluated. Something's wrong. This is not normal. This is not a normal way to live.
Yeah.
So it's really the quality of life is what we're treating.
So that's one of the things, and even if they haven't tried all those other criteria, still coming in and talking to you and going, and then leaving it up to the professionals to jump in and say, hey, here's some things I would recommend first. Dropping
Absolutely.
10 to 15 pounds and going to a yoga class or two, learning how to be, because that's one of the things for me is like, I go to a yoga class and see all these people that can like bend down and touch their toes and like do, and I can't do any of those things. I'm like, man, I know that helps with your longevity and with your ability to get around and stay mobile.
There's no question. Yoga, Pilates, and the good news is a lot more people are engaged in these activities. These are good for your core, good for your flexibility, and good for your strength. So, most patients we can treat with just, the proper exercises. If they need the anti-inflammatories, the occasional injection. But it's for that subset of patients that don't get better that the artificial disc really is a benefit, whether it's in the neck or in the low back. And it's made a big, big difference.
Yeah, so I think that's something to remember. If you're fits with chronic pain, to be defined as chronic, how long would that have to go?
Well, it would be pain that's greater than 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
In other words, if most backaches get better in 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 3 to 4 weeks, and sometimes a little longer, but they're getting better. But if you stay constant and you're miserable every day, you need to go in and get it checked out.
One more thing before we go, man, how important this is, especially for the younger patient. For the patient who's still in their 30s, 40s, even now with a longer life expectancy, we're getting into the 50s and 60s, is still a fairly young person.
Absolutely.
Who still wants to stay mobile. They still have a job to do. And so tell me the benefits of making sure you know all your options.
Well, I think as a patient, it helps to do your homework, because if you've been told that you need a fusion because of some condition that you have, you should always ask your surgeon or who's ever recommending the fusion, am I a candidate for disc replacement? And the answer might be no, or it might be no, I don't believe in it, which is just ignorance, or no, you're not a candidate because you have had X, Y, and Z pathology in your back. So, we see a lot of second opinion of patients that have been told they need fusions, and they come to us seeking us out because they would like to explore disc replacement. And in many cases, they are a candidate for disc replacement. Now, we are very, very selective. So if you think of a big circle of patients that are candidates for spine fusion,
sure.
Well, there's another smaller circle in there where patients are great candidates for disc replacement. So I think you owe it to yourself to take advantage of today's technology. For example, I operate on a patient of mine that I did a artificial disc in his neck about 5 years ago, and he's 38 years old today. Yesterday, we did an artificial disc on him in his lumbar spine, and I said to him, you are so lucky, that you live at this time, because in the past, we would have done a fusion in your neck and a fusion in your low back, and then I would have tapped you on the back and say, see you in about another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And now it's like, live your life.
Yeah. And so you're saying that you still get full range, like full range motion, your life isn't altered a whole lot by those.
No, basically after, the artificial disc is made of metal and usually has some type of plastic inside that allows it to move, and your body fuses to the ends of the artificial disc by bone growing in it. Once that's grown in at 3 months, it takes between 6 and 12 weeks, but we tell patients wait 3 months. They can go back and do anything, and we have mechanics, we have joggers, we have marathoners, skiers, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. That's really impressive. Yeah, I think that's the importance. If you're a doctor, I have some friends who work in, they're doctors, and they work in pain management, and they go, hey, if any doctor tells you they don't want you to get a second opinion, that's a giant red flag.
Big red flag.
Yeah, it should be a big red flag. And there are a lot of times my friend has his frustrations about the industry. He goes, most doctors, and again, it's a great field, but he goes, they know one way and one thing.
Well,
and they want to stick to that one thing.
And the other thing about disc replacement, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but a lot of surgeons aren't trained in it. They don't want to do it. And financially, you make a lot more money doing a fusion than you do a disc replacement.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Again, I want you guys to remember, if you're feeling chronic back pain, that's that pain that lasts longer than 3 months, and you want to reach out, or someone has told you that a fusion is the way to go, always reach out for a second opinion. That's going to be the Center for Disc Replacement. The number there is 1-844-544-9501. And you can find it at thcds.com, Center for Disc Replacement. All that will be put at the bottom of the screen. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Dr. Geiger, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.